folks joining in. Firstly, a great good afternoon or a very good morning, depending on where you are joining in from today. I think I'm very excited to host the session from Peony side on how to seamlessly expand your business to the US. I'm sure many of us attending the session today either already have a business in India that's doing very well and are looking to expand overseas, with the US being a very attractive market. And the session is for you to understand more on what are the ways you can do this and how easy it is for you to actually set up an entity there and receive payments from your clients there, right? I'm sure the session is going to be beneficial for you. So the agenda is we will have a session by Arjun from Doola and then followed by Sapna from Payoneer. Towards the end, we'll open it up for questions. Should you have to keep it easy, the questions will be in a written format in the Q&A section, and then the panelists will answer the questions once you type them in. I think the floor is yours, Arjun. Please introduce yourself and take it from here.
Fantastic. It's amazing to see such a global audience, and thank you so much to the Payoneer team for making this happen. Yeah, just the energy from entrepreneurs globally is really exciting. That's what we see at Doola, but specifically from India, it's very inspiring. A little bit about myself and Doola. My family is actually originally from Chennai and moved to England, and then my family immigrated to US when I was 6 years old. And my parents actually immigrated to the US, as cheesy as it sounds, for the opportunity in America, American education, jobs in America, the cultural mixing pot that America presents. And in one word, American opportunity. And it is sort of funny how with Doola, what we're really providing is access to American opportunity by helping folks from anywhere in the world click a button and easily form a US entity, help spin up their financial stack, and then handle their IRS tax filings and compliance. We're going to dive a lot into that, but companies like Doola and companies like Payoneer who can really help you build your money stack and move money globally. It's powerful. It's really inspiring to see companies like Payoneer powering entrepreneurship globally too, and really excited to be here. So yeah, thank you so much for hosting, and excited to really dive in on some of the nitty gritty about forming companies and how to move money globally.
Thanks, Arjun. I'll go next. My name is Sapna. I head sales for Payoneer India. Payoneer, again, we'll dive deep a lot more into what Payoneer can do for a SMB or for a customer who plans to expand globally. But if I have to make a quick 30-second pitch in terms of what Payoneer does, Payoneer is a NASDAQ-listed leading international payment provider. We help businesses who work globally or who export goods and services globally to collect funds from their B2B customers, marketplaces, along with checkout solutions in 10 plus currencies, which is a more efficient way of receiving payments as compared to wire transfers, right? So if you're somebody who is looking to go global, any possible use case that you can have as a business, be it collecting funds, be it holding currencies, managing currencies, having a card, or making payouts across the globe, that is something that Payoneer excels in. Over to you, Arjun.
Amazing. What I'm going to now do is share a couple slides that walk through how one can seamlessly from outside the US expand and launch a US entity. And through that process, I'm also going to share more about how Doola plays a role in that. And some of the top mistakes, or I won't even say mistakes, but some of the top things that people just simply aren't aware of when going through this process. After that, we'll pass it back over to Payoneer, where we'll do a dive in there. And then at the end, we'll save some time for Q&A too. I guess if there are questions, it looks like folks are chatting in Zoom, but please feel free to toss the questions in there. But I will share my screen now and going to run through a bit of slides and some context on specifically why we're all here, but how one can seamlessly expand your business to the US. Let's jump in. I explained a little bit about what Doola does, but in one picture or in one slide, this is the world, or this is the scenario that founders globally face when they're looking to get a business off the ground. And the truth is, I put 10 boxes here, but there might as well be 100. I think there are well over 100 if you talk about the number of people and tools and conversations needed to actually get a business off the ground the truth is that founders just have to cobble together solutions. And what we realized, especially for folks outside the US, especially in India, is that so much inertia mentally is spent on this as a roadblock, and you can't move ahead and actually launch your company. It's a lack of knowledge, it's a lack of time, it's a lot of stress, and it can be a lot of money. We saw this and thought, wait a second, what if we could build this business in a box? What if we could literally connect those dots and create a solution that not just forms a company, but helps you maintain it and grow it year over year? And for everything that we can't do in-house, work with best-in-class global partners like Payoneer and other companies to ensure that customers can truly satisfy every one of their needs as they grow their business. What we learned is that this problem and this solution has really resonated globally. We're blessed to be backed by some of the world's best investors, including Y Combinator, Hustle Fund, Nexus Venture Partners, which is actually based in Bangalore and San Francisco, the Y Combinator Continuity Fund, and more. But the most important thing is what we've been able to do for our customers. And what I actually want to do is start with a case study or example of a company that we've worked with from India. India is actually our most popular country outside of the US, and show you actually someone who's gone from 0 to 1 with doola. The company is called Aurora RCM, and what they're using is AI technology for RCM management or revenue cost management. This company started from scratch with doola. You can see some of the accolades that they've earned as well. And the truth is, anyone with a napkin idea, anyone with a side hustle, anyone with an idea can now confidently come to doola, click a button, and form their company, form a Wyoming or Delaware LLC or C Corp, raise funds from US investors, sell to US customers, and have full confidence and peace of mind that doola can take care of things on that side. We have customers from every continent except Antarctica. We're still looking for our first customer from Antarctica. But for everyone in India listening, if there's folks from other countries listening, even if there's folks in the US listening, I know it's 6:40 a.m., so I don't know how many people are up on the East Coast or on the West Coast. But the thing is, and this is the first thing I'll say, not many people realize that you can actually open a US company from outside of the US. And you might be thinking, what are some of the benefits or why open a US company? The US is one of the leading economies in the world. And one could argue it is the most lucrative consumer market in the world. For your business in this day and age too, having access to that market is crucial. If you've started a business abroad and you aren't selling to US customers, incredible. But by coming to the US and selling there, you can add additional revenue channels, build additional awareness for your business, and really build a global brand too. And those are some of the top reasons why folks decide to come to the US and decide to expand there. Specifically, let's jump into some of the top reasons we've heard. And I've personally worked with over 1,000 founders globally to help them set up a US entity. And I'm going to run through it. You can see here some of the top benefits as to why Indian founders specifically should set up a US company. The very first thing I'll say actually before coming in here, and I'll actually touch on this, is a little trivia question for folks. Does anyone know what the best state to form an LLC is? Feel free to comment, but people get tripped up even on that before they should even start. But they think, okay, I want to start a company. What's the best state to form in? The best state to form in is actually, if you're an international resident, you can choose any state to form in. And I will come back to the answer on what the best state is. But my point there is that there's many questions and parts of the process which can be handled. But if you're aligned on the top needs or some of the top benefits, the rest can be done. So we'll come back to that, the nitty-gritty solution of what's the best state to form in, but I'm going to run through some of the top reasons here. So first is reputation. When you're talking to customers globally, and we've seen this from customers, when you go and talk to a client and say, hey, I have a business in X country, obviously that holds weight, having an entity versus being a freelancer. But when you're able to come to the table and say, we have a US business, that holds a different level of trust and credibility, especially with US customers. I mentioned access to the US market. Access to US investors is massive. US investors will actually require a Delaware C corporation in order to invest. If you want access to US investors, the largest venture capital market in the world, a Delaware C corp would be required. Some other benefits, the payment infrastructure in the United States, payment processing, less setup and maintenance than is actually required. And we're going to run through the process, tax benefits, and actually compliance, which can be done too. When you put those together, if you are looking to expand to the US, expand your business globally, expand your revenue streams, a US company can have many benefits. Let's actually walk through the process now. I gave a little sneak peek at one of the most common questions we get, which is what is the best state? So we'll start with this. We're going to run through how to form a company, get an address from anywhere in the world, why a government ID is required, how you can set up an actual bank account or a way to move money with a company like Payoneer. And then we'll go through an example here for selling on Amazon. There might be folks doing many different types of businesses, but we'll use Amazon as an example. Okay, I said I would give you an answer on what's the best state to form your company. A lot of people will say, oh, here are the top 5 states. I decided, no, I'm going to just tell you what state I think you should form in. And if you disagree, please tell me, give me feedback. But I want to give you a strong opinion, loosely held actual answer here. If you live outside the United States, I'll draw it like this. Well, I'll draw it in the air. If you live outside the United States, you can actually choose any state to form your LLC in. If you live inside the United States, for those listening, you should form in the state you live in. And that's because if you form outside of the state you live in, you actually have to pay state taxes in 2 states, the state you're doing business in where you live and the state you formed your LLC in. So if you live in the US, it's possible to do what's called a foreign filing to register to do business in 2 states. But you save money when setting up by forming in the state you live in. Okay, now let's come back to that non-US resident segment. Let's say you live outside the US. The world is your oyster. You can truly choose any state to form in. That's something many people don't know. Okay, you're going to ask me what's the best state to form in. So I'm going to give you 2 answers, then I'll round it down to 1. The 2 most popular states are Delaware and Wyoming. Delaware is the most popular business state for formation in the US. There's actually been more entities formed in Delaware than the number of people who live in Delaware. I think that's wild. The top Fortune 500 companies, the majority are Delaware companies too. So many benefits there. However, don't sleep on Wyoming. Many people don't know that the first LLC was actually invented and created in Wyoming. The other big benefit is that Wyoming has very friendly e-commerce laws. They're very nimble when it comes to LLC legislation. If you're a blockchain company, they're very forward thinking there as well. And the big one, when you're starting a business, especially if you're a small and medium-sized business, is price. In Delaware, there's a $100 state fee and a yearly $60 fee to the state. In Delaware, there's a $300 fee to the state each year. So what I tell founders is, if you really want the prestige of having a Delaware entity and you think that will have an impact with your customer base, form in Delaware. But you are not taking a step down or a shabby choice at all with Wyoming. I would argue it's the most friendly digital state, or digital state in terms of legislation for e-commerce sellers internationally and folks with an online business. And you're saving $240 per year in state fees. When you're starting a business, every dollar does matter. So that's my answer there. Delaware or Wyoming. If you really want me to say an answer, I'll say Wyoming, but I hope that's helpful. And now you can tell your friends if they ask you, hey, here's why Wyoming is maybe the best state to form in if you live outside the US. Step 2, you formed your company with or without doula. You've either gone through the state's website or with doula, click button, boom, we've helped you take care of that. The next thing is you're going to need a US address. You live outside the US, and even if you have a friend or a cousin or a family member in the US, I don't recommend you use that address. Do you really want that address on the public record, on the state's record? Do you really want customer mail and important IRS notices going there? Or you could have a purely virtual address where mail is sent and scanned and uploaded, where you can access it from anywhere in the world. It separates personal from business, and it also gives you the ability to, again, access this mail from anywhere at your fingertips, from your phone, from your iPad, from your Android device, iPhone, whatever it might be. I heard Tesla's making a phone of sorts. So whatever phone it might be, you can access your documents from there. So with Doula, we can actually help you set up that virtual address. And a big thing I'm going to stress is the importance of separating personal from business. Why? When you set up your entity, you can get a business bank account, you can get a business address, you can get a business phone number. And not only does that add a level of professionalism, but think about your customers. It allows you to separate those 2 things. And trust me, even when things start rosy, there's going to be cases where customers are upset. Do you really want them on your personal device, or do you want a dedicated mailbox, phone line, company address, etc., where you can handle those queries or queries? Set up your entity, you've gotten an address. Now, the next step is what's called getting a US EIN, or tax identification number, so you can set up your financial payment stack. In order to do this, you will need a government ID to actually apply for a bank account. Now, on the left here, you'll see a form, which is called Form SS4. And this is how crazy the US tax code is and the IRS is. SS4 is an acronym for an acronym, which is EIN. And EIN stands for Employee Identification Number. So once you decipher what those two acronyms are, and you fill out this PDF, which looks like it was designed in the AOL era, if you can decipher that and submit the documents to the IRS, great, you can get your tax ID number. But if you live outside the US, it actually can take 8 to 11 weeks to process. With Doola, you can click a button and again, we'll automatically fill that form for you, get your signature request and send it. But you need this document you'll see on the left side of your screen here in order to apply for a bank account. This is a process fully governed by the IRS. IRS stands for Internal Revenue Service. And once you get that document, you can then set up a bank account. There are many banking options out there. There's many ways to move money. Doola has a banking offering. Really excited to dive into a way Payoneer can really link up and you can transfer money globally, especially for international founders too. But with a US bank account or a payment system like Payoneer, you can now plug into apps globally. And specifically here, we're using Amazon as an example. You see a Shopify logo, but the beauty of platforms like this is that you no longer need to code a digital storefront from scratch. Right away with a US entity, you can plug into US Amazon, US Shopify, and access, again, the world's most lucrative customer base. In terms of timing, now you might be thinking, great, how long does this take? Typically, formation takes about a week. Now, it depends on the state again. Believe me, if we could have Doola employees or even myself in the state of Delaware to submit these filings, we would. But this is a state-run process. We can expedite things by actually hand-delivering or couriering applications. But once it's in the state's building, if you will, or the IRS is building, it is on the state or government department. Get your company in a week and the address. The tax ID can take time, 8 to 11 weeks in some cases. If it's expedited, it can take a little faster, 3 to 6 weeks. Doola can help with both. Setting up your payment stack or bank account, Payoneer can dive in way more there. And then you can finally, within a day or two, link into Amazon after some postcard verification. The single most important thing for us is our customers. And the beauty of this business and why every single day I'm so inspired to learn from the stories of founders and to see what they're building is we are seeing people take a dream idea and turn it into their dream business. And the fact that we get to play a tiny role in that means the world. And you can see some of the reviews here. You can check them out on Trustpilot yourself. But without our customers' businesses succeeding, we do not have a business as well. So reviews like this mean the absolute world. You can check out reviews from customers in any country and see folks just like yourself who have gone through this journey. And again, we get this over email, we get this over Trustpilot. We have folks who've been with us for multiple years. And the things that we try to provide are professionalism, knowledge, and helping people understand and know what they don't know. Great. Now, just to wrap things up here, for everyone listening, and I can share a link at the end, we would love to provide just a little bit of free value to folks who are here. And what that is specifically is a one-on-one free consultation with Doola. You might have questions on, hey, what actually is the best state to form? I have a real estate company, and you want to just clarify if it's Wyoming versus Delaware. Or you actually want to walk through the process for getting an EIN. Or maybe you're just a bit confused or stressed about IRS tax filings, which we didn't dive into now, and you'd like to just get a one-on-one consultation to discuss that and make sure you can stay 100% compliant. So what we'll drop in after is a link where you can actually grab some time to chat with someone from Doola, and we'll also be doing webinars in the future as well. Awesome. So we'll save time for Q&A at the end, but with that, pass it over to Payoneer and let's dive into hearing how, understatement I know, but how you can not only just move money globally, but do some other incredible things with a company like Payoneer.
Thanks, Arjun.
Go ahead, Sapna. Thank you so much for that very insightful session, Arjun. I would like, I'm sure the audience has taken away a lot of learnings from this. And now I would like Sapna to go ahead with her presentation.
So Arjun, I think the most interesting part for me was Wyoming. While a lot of people, I see most of the businesses which get incorporated in US, most of them end up going for Delaware for some reason, but Wyoming was good to know information.
Hey, you know the fun fact too, so tell your friends, don't sleep on Wyoming, but that'll be a fun debate. Well, maybe we'll tweet that later. We'll do a little fun fact.
I'm sure the picture changed their mind. Great. So I think what Arjun rightly covered, one of the main motivations behind businesses, and we speak to founders, we speak to SMBs day in day out, specifically exporters of goods and services who are doing a lot of business outside of India, typically specifically in the US. So one of the main motivations for setting up an entity outside of India from a payment perspective is the ability to collect funds more efficiently from B2B customers in the US, and to be able to hold dollars, or to be able to hold funds. And again, if you're somebody who has multiple use cases, you want to receive payments, you want to make payouts globally, then having an international banking partner is having an international banking partner becomes very, very important, because getting funds into India and then moving funds outside of India becomes extremely inefficient, because there is a double conversion that is involved, right? So then having a partner or having a banking platform that can help you collect funds efficiently, hold funds efficiently, manage multiple currencies, and be able to make global payouts becomes super critical. Right. So a quick glance at Payoneer. We started operations. We've been doing this for about more than 15, 16 years. We are a NASDAQ listed company in the US. We currently support about 5 million SMBs, marketplaces, and enterprises. In terms of our payment solutions and the support or the banking infrastructure that we have, we support more than 190 countries, and we of course have presence in 22 office locations. If you look at the total payouts that we processed last year, it was about $44 billion worth of transactions. Now, to put it very simply, a business can primarily have two use cases. One is to get paid. It could be getting paid from their customers. It could be getting paid from their vendors. It could be getting paid from their B2B partners. And the second use case could be to make payouts, right? Again, to, let's say, any kind of consultant, any kind of agent. Maybe salaries need to be disbursed globally for a global business. These are broadly the two use cases that a business might have. And Payoneer is a 360-degree platform where we cover all possible use cases that a business has while enabling global payments. Right. So let's deep dive a little into the get paid part. Now, as a business in India, you might say that, hey, I have customers in the US, but payments for me usually is not a problem because I have a bank account in India, and a wire is the generally acceptable way of receiving funds across the countries, right? But wire transfers, and again, I'm sure the audience that we have today is already somebody who's been doing this for a period of time, and I think all of us broadly understand the problems which come with wire transfers. So for your customer in the US, he has to incur some kind of wire fee to be able to remit those funds from USD into your Indian bank account. That's one. Second, customer support can be a nightmare. We've heard a lot of stories where transactions have been made by customers in the US, but the transactions take a lot of time before they can be traced. And again, customer service becomes a very, very painful journey because there are multiple banking infrastructures involved, right? So there is a possibility that the bank which is remitting funds from the US might have a correspondent or an intermediary bank in the middle, right? Which is why sometimes transactions take a lot of time, and then tracking those transactions can become very, very painful. And then, of course, there is a FX play to it, right? Where when this money gets converted into India, there is some kind of charge that you have to pay bank for giving these kind of FX services. And while I would say that we also have great banking in India, right? So Arjun pointed out that US banking is one of the best in the world. Well, India is not very far behind. We have some of the best fintechs and banks in India. But I would say that the level of service or the efficiency in terms of commercials that you get from banks in India, frankly, depends on how big or small you are, right? So if you're somebody who's doing millions of dollars through a bank in India, maybe you get extremely competitive rates, maybe you have a dedicated account manager. But if you're an SMB, right, if you're anywhere between, let's say, between 20K to maybe 150K per month in terms of your FX receivables, banks usually don't end up giving you a very good rate or the kind of customer service that your business might need, specifically when you are only looking at cross-border remittance, right? So coming back to the getting paid part, once you set up an entity outside of India, Payoneer is able to give you local receiving accounts, not just in the US, but in 10 plus currencies. So it's like, and again, it's a matter of prestige, like Arjun rightly said, that you can actually now go to your customers in the US and say that, hey, I have a local bank account in the US. Similarly, in a total of 10 more currencies, right? So if you have collections from Canada, if you have collections from Australia, you have collections from Japan, Singapore, even Dubai. You can simply go and tell your customers that instead of doing a wire transfer, I have a local bank account in your country or your currency. So then for you, it is just a matter of making a local domestic transfer. So this is the first product offering that we have. The second product offering that we have is merchant services. For businesses who specifically have a play where they have B2C customers or customers who come on their web stores and they're taking certain products or services, we also have a payment gateway or a merchant checkout offering. The third offering that we have is something called billing services, which is simply a payment request. So sitting in India, while a bank might still be able to service wire transfers for you, but having the ability, and again, US is a very credit card first market, right? So most of the businesses in the US prefer paying through credit cards versus making bank transfers, specifically when they're dealing with businesses outside of the US, because there's a bit of a trust deficit. So BLS is again one product which is of a lot of utility to the founders and the SMBs that we interact with, in which from a single dashboard, you can simply, with a click of a button, put in the email ID of your customer. An email kind of pops up where he will be able to see the invoice and the payment for which you have invoiced him. And there'll be an option where he can simply click and make a payment to you through either a debit card and a credit card. And we support all major payment networks, including Amex, Diner, and so on. MasterCard, Visa, of course. Right. So all of the getting paid use cases get covered through a single powerful tool and a very easy to use dashboard. Now, once you have collected funds, like I said, that within India, while we always have the option of having a domestic account and a linked EEFC account, but EEFC account again has its challenges that you can't hold funds beyond 45 days. Right, and the EFC account depending on what kind of bank you have. Do you have one of the international banks, or do you have a domestic bank which might not be very strong in forex? They also don't support all currencies in terms of EFC accounts, right? So with that in mind, having a US entity and then having coupling that with a Payoneer account, you're able to hold funds indefinitely. That's one. Second, you're able to hold funds in those respective currencies. You don't have the need to convert everything immediately into INR or into dollar. That's two. And third is that you can toggle between currencies very, very easily, right? So you can convert your USD into, let's say, Canadian dollars in case you want to make a payout, or you can hold currency as it is indefinitely. We also have working capital for some specific use cases. So as a business, and again, SMBs typically, this is where they need a lot of help, right? They need working capital. That's also something that we provide. Plus, Payoneer also supports you with an extremely strong partner ecosystem, right? So for example, the associations that we have with entities which can help you incorporate an overseas entity. So that could be one. Plus, we're also integrated with multiple platforms like Amazon, Walmart, and eBay. So in case you need any kind of help in terms of getting onboarded with these platforms or anything else, Payoneer goes over and beyond from only being a payment partner to kind of truly being your consultant and helping you expand your business overseas. Coming to payout, so once you have funds into your Payoneer account, of course, there is a use case to either withdraw this fund or bring funds back into India, which would be local, which would be withdrawal to bank. You always have the option, once you have your funds in your Payoneer account, you can always move your funds back to India on demand. And again, our rates are extremely competitive, depending on your volume and the frequency of transactions. The other use case, and again, this is specifically for services and also our Amazon sellers, we see that there is a big use case of spending money on promoting your business outside, right? So it could be AWS spends, it could be promoting your business on a Google or on a Facebook. This is something that our businesses see a lot of value in, because in absence of a US entity or in absence of a global payment provider, you would the alternate that you would have would be to use a Indian bank account and use a Indian credit card, and again pay anywhere between a 3% to a 5% FX fee. So essentially what you're doing is that you're converting your INR into dollar and then paying that kind of FX markup and then doing transaction. The second problem why this product becomes extremely useful is that most of these cards, right, because cross-border transactions within India are considered to be generally risky by the banks. So the daily limits that you have on these cards is not very high. That's again one thing that a lot of businesses struggle with, because businesses who the core of which, for example, we have a lot of gaming companies which need to promote themselves, on a daily basis. They have huge number of ad spends. So if you're somebody who has huge ad spends, you would need a daily limit, and again you would end up avoiding a double conversion charge, because hey, if your customers are paying you in USD, there's no point bringing that fund into India and then paying a FX markup to be able to make transactions for these kind of ad spends. So that's on payment on Payoneer cards. And the third one would be a payment outside of network, right? So we have use cases where customers, where your B2B customers are paying you in USD, the funds come into your Payoneer account, and then maybe there is a use case where you need to pay, developers. It could be somebody that you've subcontracted to. It could be a business consultant or a partner in the US who's maybe bringing you business, or it could be anybody around the world, right, who's helping or supporting your business in any way. Through payment outside of network, it is as simple as having a dashboard where you can quickly go add a beneficiary, and it doesn't matter which country they are, because we support payments in 200 plus currencies. So let's say you have somebody sitting in Dubai, or you have somebody sitting in Bangladesh, or you have somebody sitting in Singapore, you can quickly make payments to them, and payments typically take anywhere between 24 hours to get credited to that person, depending on which currency you're making a payout to them in. Other than that, I think while you can always, you also have the option of maybe having multiple banking relationships globally. You might have a bank account in India. You might try setting up another account outside of India. And then obviously there are other fintech providers, right, who also have this kind of service. How we are different in that sense, or what our proposition is, that we offer 24/7 worldwide multilingual support, which becomes very, very important to our customers in India. That's fun. We have a physical team in India, right? So you're not talking to a bot all the time. You have, and again, in India, we are extremely, this is something that we're very sensitive to, right? So we believe in India, people are sensitive towards price and people are sensitive towards a good customer service. We have a dedicated customer management teams. We have dedicated account managers who are available to service you. So essentially what Payoneer is giving you is an international banking experience right out of India, with the customer service or a person to talk to from India. Again, this is the slide that we love to present. These are some of the brands that we work with globally. So specific to people in India, Walmart, if you're somebody who's selling on Amazon Global, if you're somebody selling on Walmart, eBay, you probably already have a Payoneer account. Leading platforms or marketplaces in terms of services like Upwork, Fiverr, they use the Payoneer rails to make global payouts. Again, an interesting fact that all the Airbnb hosts in India get paid through Payoneer. But again, this is behind the scenes, so most of them might not know this, but Airbnb does global payouts on the Payoneer rails. If I talk about SMBs, we service more than 35,000 SMBs in India, including some huge names like Tally, we have Tech Mahindra, and so on. Okay, so this is the B2B solution in detail. I mean, I did cover it earlier, so this again is to kind of help you visualize it better. Like we said, that in terms of collection, two broad products. One is that you get a local receiving account through which a customer can make a bank transfer to you directly, and the other one is a payment request through which you can collect funds using credit cards. Again, a visual representation on how you get issued 10 different virtual accounts in different currencies, which you can simply share with your customer. And these virtual accounts also support ACH. So if you look at different countries, right? So different countries, similar to maybe a NEFT or an IPS or a RTGS within India, every country will have their own local preferred methods through which customers would like to make the payments, right? So for If, for example, in the US, it's e-check, it's ACH. That is what you'll hear your customers say that, hey, can we make a payment to you through ACH, right? So similarly, in Canada, in Australia, you have something called EFT. There is a different mechanism in UK and in Europe. And Payoneer, the advantage of having these kind of accounts is that Payoneer helps or gives the convenience to your customer to make a payment in their locally preferred manner. Now, this part, again, is super relevant to India. There is something called FIRC. Anytime as a business, if you're receiving B2B payments within India, and this is again a part that we see a lot of our customers struggle with, specifically with banks, right? So anytime you're getting remittances into India, this is a compliance document that you need to have from either your banking partner or your fintech partner who is converting dollars into INR for you. The struggle or the challenge that we see here is that while there are some banks who have been now able to digitize this particular document, but still in a lot of cases, we see our customers struggle where they have to physically go to a bank to ask for this particular document, or the FIRCs get delayed and they have to keep chasing banks for this particular document. And how Payoneer has solved this problem is that we don't wait for you to come to us and for us to issue this document to you. There is a simple to use intuitive dashboard where this document is auto-populated. So the moment you receive any B2B payment from outside of India and you withdraw it into your Indian current account, this document gets uploaded within 7 days on the dashboard. So it's all of your FIRCs, all of your compliance documents. You don't have to run behind banks. Your CA will not be running after you. Again, a single simple to use dashboard, a compliant dashboard, which gives you all of these documents in one. That's it. I'll keep it brief, and I would want to have some Q&As and understand if there are any specific areas that you would want us to expand. I'll take a pause here. Abhishek, over to you.
Thanks so much for that, Sapna. I think we have a lot of interest from the audience. There are a lot of questions for both you and Arjun. We got a lot of questions. I think I'll start with the first one, which is from Yogesh. Stripe charges about 5.5% from me to receive payments from USA. If I form a company from you, I guess that's for you, Arjun. Do you give me a payment link from which I receive payment with a lesser fee?
Great question. To summarize the question in other contexts, or the way we've also heard this, is there are different payment processing fees from different payment processing platforms across the world. If you have a US payment processing system, are there less fees, more fees? Are there any benefits? This depends. If you are using Stripe, and massive fan of Stripe, we actually personally use Stripe for doola as a business too. The processing fees, or the percentage they take, does differ based on the country you're in and the Stripe account or Stripe country that you're set up in. In the US specifically, you can check online at stripe.com and see if the payment rates in the US are less than or more than your country. What I can say, though, is we have heard from many customers that the US rates are less. But Yogesh, I don't know the exact country you're in. If you actually can live chat us online later, we can actually do a check for you. But what we would do is check the Stripe account in your country or payment platform there, compare them to the US rates, and we could actually see. So to answer though directly, it depends on the country you're in. We have heard from customers, though, that a US payment system, US company, US Stripe account, you can actually have less in fees. And even if, let's use an example, instead of 5.5%, let's say you're able to get that down to 2.5%. That 3% might not sound like much, but for every $100, that's $3 extra. And a business starts with 100. Next thing you know, it's 100,000, and that money really starts to add up. So, every penny does matter when you're growing a business. So that's a fantastic question, Yogesh.
So I'll also add to that. So Yogesh, the reason why Stripe, and I'm assuming that you are currently based out of India and your entity is incorporated in India, right? So this charge would be a combination of the credit card. I'm assuming here, since the fee is quite high, there's a credit card component to it. Plus, there would be a conversion component to it, right? Because the dollars are getting converted into INR, right? So once you set up an entity in the US, I'm assuming that you will not be converting those funds into INR immediately, right? So that takes away a portion of this anyway, because there'll be no conversion. It will be a USD to USD transaction, and funds are going to stay into the bank account that you open once you do set up an entity outside of India. I can answer this context. I can answer this question in context of Payoneer, right? So our we are more cost efficient as compared to some of our competition. I would not want to call out Stripe in particular, but if you look at some other leading fintechs, which can turn out to be very expensive because there is a markup on the card, plus there is a markup in terms of conversion, right? So that is one place where we can be very, very efficient. If you have an entity outside of India, you can look at maybe a 30 to 40% reduction in this particular rate with Payoneer at least.
Great. I think moving on to the next question from Joseph. This is Payoneer supported in Africa?
Yes, so we have about within Africa, which particular currency we could have answered this in a detailed manner, but we do support 200 plus currencies. And in case it is a slightly exotic currency or a slightly smaller currency that Payoneer doesn't support, then we also give the option of a USD wire, which is an international standard, right? So for some of the smaller currencies, we give USD wire as a mode of collection. And the 10 large currencies that we have do not do not include currencies in Africa, but from a payout perspective, we might be supporting a couple of currencies in Africa.
Thanks for that, Sapna. I think moving on to the next one. This is from Mohammed Tariq. I already have a Payoneer account. Once I receive any amount from the projects we have, it gets directly credited to my bank account, but I want to do some partial payment to tech or freelancer from the received amount. How is this possible?
So currently, while we in this webinar, we spoke about our global offering, right, where you can receive funds, you can hold funds into your Payoneer wallet indefinitely, and from there you can also make payouts. Now, in your case, I'm assuming that you only have an Indian entity today. Now, with only an Indian entity, we are regulated by RBI. And if you recall, I had also spoken about the EFC account, where Indian banks are also not allowed to hold funds for more than 45 days in case you have a EFC account. Payoneer operates under the OPGSP guideline under RBI in India. Under which we are not allowed to hold funds. So the reason why this is happening is that the moment Payoneer collects funds for you from, let's say, the US, we have to, as per compliance, immediately credit it into your current account or whatever your linked withdrawal account is. Since we're unable to hold funds, we will not be able to give this feature to you. But again, the moment you set up a US entity, this problem gets solved. Because once you set up a US entity, you will be able to hold funds through Payoneer, and then you can make payments, partial payments to your tech or freelancers across the world. So setting up a US entity is the answer to this particular problem.
Great. Thanks for that, Sapna. I think the next one's for you again as well. This is from Joseph. His question is it possible in one account on Payoneer to connect 3 different bank accounts?
So, Joseph, technically no, because your withdrawal account, right? So when you withdraw money to a particular account, that is a single account that has to come into your an account whose ownership is in your name. So if you have an entity, if you're a freelancer, that account has to be on your name. Or if you have a company, right? So it has to be the current account, and the name has to match with the company which is, onboarded with us. But you have another option of make a payment through which, and again, the precursor to this would be setting up an entity outside of India, because like I said earlier, that in India, you can't hold funds. So since you can't hold funds, there will be a single withdrawal account where Payoneer would be auto-pushing money. But the moment you set up an entity outside of India, you will be able to hold funds. And from there, you can make a payment to these 2 separate accounts, apart from your withdrawal as well. So in short, the answer is yes, but the precursor to this is setting up a US entity.
Thanks for that, Sapna. I think the next question is from Lipika. Her question is, I'm in the service line, mainly intellectual property in India, handling global clients. My query is that if I want to expand business in the form of receiving outsourced work from legal firms in the US, can you provide any help? If my clients from the US increase, then do I have to open a bank account in the US through you? I'm not sure this is for. Is the question clear, Sapna and Arjun? This is, you can check the question. I think this is from Lipika. It's a long question, I understand.
This is the question from Lipika Payne.
Yes.
My understanding of this question, let's give it a try. Someone's based in India. They want to receive outsourced work from legal firms in the US. So it sounds like in this case, they actually want to work with a customer, in this case, a legal firm in the US. Can you provide help? Yes, a US entity can help there. And it might be the case that, look, some US customers or clients are okay with working with an international entity. Right? You technically don't need a US business to do business with a US customer, but many US clients will actually require or feel way more comfortable that this is a US entity with a US tax number. And oftentimes to invoice or receive payments, you actually need to do a bank wire. A customer or a client won't want to do an international wire. So in that case, a bank account, or let's say a company, US tax number, and then a solution like Doola or Payoneer or a combination of both can help. And yes, if your clients in the US increases, you technically don't have to open a bank account. But again, that can be a massive sign of trust or social proof, or an easier way for you to actually receive income or receive funds from the client. So I hope that answered the question there.
Lipika, I hope that answered your question. If not, I'll please do drop in a note and we'll get back to your question. Next, we have Dibyendu, and his question is, we are into online retail and cross-border e-commerce. We have incorporated in Singapore, Dubai, and are looking forward to incorporate in the US soon. Do I have to apply for ODI as per RBI for all these three countries, or is one ODI compliance sufficient? This is
I'm just trying to
Dibyendu
find the
Ganguly.
question.
This
Does
is
this say Payoneer or Doola or both? I'm just trying to find the question.
this should be like the second question after Lipika's. There are a lot of
Okay.
questions.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me add a bit of color here. Sorry. Let me add a little bit of color here. We have learned a bit about RBI regulations as we have many customers in India. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure exactly if you have to apply for this. What we can do though is at Doola, and happy to help here, we do have folks on our team who have tax expertise in India. So what we can do is, again, if you message us online, we can actually check in with our tax specialist in India and answer that question from that perspective and see if there's any US impact too. But one thing I want to highlight about this question and why it's great, this is the complexity founders face when they're getting a business off the ground from international places. You have to not only understand and be comfortable with US regulation, which is why folks trust Doola, but you need to make sure you're setting things up properly in your home country. So what I always recommend is talk to a professional. Talk to a professional like Payoneer, talk to a professional like Doola who's worked with thousands, tens of thousands of customers, but also talk to a professional in your home country as well.
Great. Thanks for that, Arjun. I think the next one's for you again. What's your opinion on Colorado, where LLC fees is just $1 and annual cost is $10?
Great question. Question-wise, my opinion on Colorado LLCs, where the state fees are rather low. I think $1 and then $10 annually. I had earlier said, for folks who hadn't heard, that the best state to form an LLC, and if you live outside the US, I gave people an answer. I said Wyoming. That being said, very good point. There are other states which might have a lower fee, either for initial setup or the annual fee. My answer here is this. If you really are optimizing for pure cost savings, then there's states like Colorado or other states where some states actually don't even have the annual fee. The reason why I still recommend Wyoming, though, is one, the $60 fee is well less than the Delaware fee of $300. But two, many people don't know that the first LLC was formed and invented in Wyoming. I do think Wyoming, and some might argue that it's pure reputation or marketing, but I think Wyoming has demonstrated that they're one of the most innovative states when it comes to legislation or pushing the boundary on what's possible for LLCs. I'll give you an example. In the summer of last year, or I guess this was now the summer of 2021, Wyoming became the first state to allow DAOs to register as LLCs. A DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. This was revolutionary. It was giving DAOs, or these Web3 or sort of tech-first entities, the same legal protections typically saved for normal LLC companies or limited liability companies. So with that in mind, to answer here, again, it really depends on what you're optimizing for. Actually, this is maybe the best way to describe it. If you're optimizing for prestige, Delaware. Can't get more prestigious than Delaware. Companies like Facebook are from Delaware, top public markets, etc. If you're optimizing for pure costs, then yes, sort by state fees and pick the fee with the fee with the lowest amount. But I think Wyoming provides a good balance, which is why that's my recommendation there. But fantastic question.
Thanks for that, Arjun. I think moving on, the next one's for you as well. This is on, is there anything else to do when opening a US company so that it is not in violation of the law in India like FEMA or FERA? Plus, what is the income tax liability?
I love questions like this because it shows that I believe at the end of the day, founders want to stay compliant. Everyone wants to look for a shortcut or a way to potentially, I won't even say avoid paying taxes, but minimize. And it's really great to see questions like this because people want to get set up right, and they should. You do not want to be facing heavy fines in the future or staying out of compliance with the IRS. To recap the question here, what do you have to do to make sure that your US entity is set up to be fully compliant? And are there any other registrations or filings you have to do in the US regarding income tax liability? The crash course quick answer here is, in order to stay compliant in the URS, there's actually 3 things you need to do. You need to have your books in order. Books meaning understanding the cash inflows and outflows of your business. Number 2, you need to stay compliant with the state. In any state in the US, there's going to be a filing required. In Delaware, that's called the annual franchise fee. In Wyoming, that's called the annual report. That filing is required year over year to stay compliant. If that filing is not submitted, your company is at risk for immediate dissolution with the state, which means it's shut down. The third one, and this is the big one, this is the one that folks get most scared about, is the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. If you are, for example, a single member LLC, so a one-person business or one-person owner, outside the US forming a US business, there's a form called Form 5472, which must be filed with the IRS. If this form is filed incorrectly or late, there's actually a fine of up to $25,000 which can be applied. That is a mind-boggling amount of money. And all it is an informational filing. But this is where it's very important to understand, submit those filings, the state filing, the IRS filing, have your books in order. And while all of that is possible on your own, companies like ourselves, we have total compliance packages to help with those things for an affordable rate. On the income tax side, to wrap things up here, to explain in one sentence, if you do not have effectively connected income in the US, you pay income where the revenue is earned. So in this case, let's say you're based in India and you're a purely digital online business. You have no physical presence in the US, no physical employees. You aren't physically based there, no physical office. In that case, because your business is online, it's digital, the revenue is being earned in India. So you would pay income tax in India. And in the US, you would pay, or you would submit that informational filing to the IRS. I hope that answers things. Taxes can be complex, and I strongly recommend folks, please take advantage of that consultation with doola, with your local tax CPA, with any other CPA, but really talk to a professional and make sure you feel at peace of mind, you've read content that you can trust, or talk to a person you can trust before taking the plunge, if you will, and setting up your entity. Because a lot of these decisions are irreversible, and it's very important that you get it right from day one.
Thanks for the detailed explanation, Arjun. I think moving on to Ujjwal, his got a simple question of what is the tax benefit of opening a US business?
What are the tax benefits of opening a US business? First thing I would say is, even before getting to tax benefits, which maybe are cost savings, I always like to think about the value you can add. Saving money is great, but instead of thinking about how to save a few $1,000s, how can you make several million? That's a way bigger impact to ROI in the business. So first thing, and I've said this over and over again, but I see this every day, having a US company opens up doors that wouldn't have been possible before in terms of trust from customers who wouldn't have worked with you before, access to that US consumer market. Those are the types of doors which can really expand the ceiling of your business. But I will answer the question directly. What are tax benefits of opening a US entity? Well, the first thing is, if you do not have a business entity, you can now have business expenses. So let's say you're traveling for work. Let's say you're buying software for work. Instead of having those be personal expenses, they're now business expenses. And if your business operates at a loss in that year, in the US, for example, then you wouldn't be paying taxes on the loss specifically. You would pay taxes if you had a profit or you're making revenue. But in this case, for example, if you formed a corporation, there is no corporate tax there if you're at a loss. Second thing I would say is in terms of the benefits, this isn't exactly a tax benefit, but this was a great question that came up earlier. There are benefits to using a US payment stack. There maybe are other countries or other tools which charge higher rates. But again, using tools and software through the Payoneer product suite, using tools and software through doola, you're able to potentially get better rates. And the example I used earlier, let's say you're doing a 5% fee versus a 2% fee through your US entity. That's 3% on every dollar, which is 3 cents if you're making $1 in revenue. That's $3 if you're doing 100. If you're doing 1,000, that's 30. Keep doing the math. That can very quickly grow as your business grows too.
Great. Thanks for that, Arjun. I think going for the next question. This is from Hemant. Can the US account receive check payments? I believe that would be for Sapna specifically.
So Hemant, sorry, am I audible?
Yes.
So Hemant, we don't support. So these are essentially virtual accounts, right, in USD. So all bank transfers or digital transfers are supported. So for example, e-check, which is ACH, is supported. But if the question was, can a physical check be accepted as a mode of collection, then the answer is no. But all other modes, so debit card, credit card, ACH, and direct bank transfers are supported.
Thanks, Sapna. Arjun and Sapna, would you have 5 more minutes? Should we extend it? I know we've reached 6 o'clock. Can we extend this? We have a few more questions.
Let's do it. I'm happy to extend.
Sure. Thanks for that. The next one's from Niyati on how is Payoneer different from Mercury bank account or Stripe?
So the differences would be in terms of being more competitive in terms of pricing. That's one. And second, in terms of I think a big difference, and specifically, I mean, I'm specifically talking about companies which are in India, right? So like I said that, customer support, not talking to a bot, speaking to an individual or an account manager who can kind of help you navigate, because cross-border payments can get extremely complex, right? The risk matrices around specifically B2B payments and large payments can get very complicated, right? So you need somebody to help you understand transactions. You need somebody to help you navigate those scenarios where your transaction gets stuck, right? Or there are more documentations required in terms of risk compliances, etc., etc. So I think the main differentiator would be I would say cost, and second would be getting the level of service that you need for a payment partner who is handling a bulk of your critical payments.
Thanks, Sapna. I think the next couple of questions for you as well. Does the Payoneer FIRC advice, does it meet Indian government compliance? This is from Mohammed Rahis. Yeah.
Yes. So what is an FIRC? A FIRC or a FIRA is simply an advice which whoever is converting your dollars or your foreign exchange to INR is supposed to issue to you, and it helps your chartered accountant or it helps your bank reconcile those payments. The FIRC that we offer is at par with what a bank would give you. So the answer is yes. Similarly, I think the next question is also around FIRC. Again, like I said, that FIRC is needed every time there is a conversion happening, right, of FX or any outside of India currency into INR. So yes, FIRC is required for all inward payments.
Great. I think the next one's for both of you, and this is more in terms of will doola or Payoneer help me if I'm in the IT services type of business, or is this only for e-commerce?
I can jump in first. One of the coolest things we see, and the question was, can doola or Payoneer help with any type of business or just e-commerce? The types of businesses that people are working on is jaw-dropping. E-commerce is booming right now. One could argue that, and not argue, one is seeing the global pandemic led to a spike in US business formation in e-commerce that's never been seen before. And what happened there was that we used to live in a world where digital or e-commerce was optional. You could have brick and mortar storefronts and people could come. But when the pandemic happened, It went from optional to default. That was the new way, and overnight that transition happened. What that meant is that e-commerce businesses and the tooling and software, whether it's companies like Webflow to build websites, or Shopify, or Stripe, or Square to process payments, Payoneers of the world, the doulas, have made it easier than ever to remotely and digitally set up a business. What that means is that e-commerce is definitely a massive bucket, but the types of businesses we work with specifically, software as a service businesses. You could be an indie hacker or a venture-backed business. Financial services, marketing services or consultancies or agencies, freelancing, influencers, people on YouTube, people on TikTok, OnlyFans, whatever it might be, folks who are building their own brand, their personal brand, etc., and looking to monetize that way. And that's really inspiring because end of day, in this day and age, an individual is a business. There's folks, look at Mr. Beast, look at his reach. He's a business on his own and he has a business underneath his business. But in this day and age, again, it doesn't matter whether you're raising venture capital, bootstrapping a business, or just building your personal brand. Doola can definitely help with any of those types of entities.
Good. So adding to that, even from a Payoneer perspective, right? Like our IT or let's say our services side of the business is almost as big as our commerce side of the business. Within IT services, the largest use case that we have today are mobile developers, app developers, SEO, digital marketing, IT consulting, SaaS. We support gaming, ad tech, B2B travel, and so on, right? So Payoneer is not only e-commerce focused. If you have a B2B use case, we do support it. Sorry, Abhishek, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Sapna, the next one's for you. I have a company in the US. Will my Payoneer account have an account in India as well? As you have mentioned, you give an account in 10 countries, I think. Yeah.
So the global receiving accounts that we have in 10 currencies do not include India. If you have a company in the US, and I'm assuming you are doing collections in the US, right? You will have a linked account in India where all your withdrawals will happen. So essentially you have local receiving accounts in 10 plus currencies, which does not include India because globally India is not a country where a lot of outward remittance happens. So these 10 major currencies, and we're happy to share with you offline on what these larger accounts are. Happy to connect with you one-to-one. But majorly these currencies are CAD, USD, Australian dollar, Japanese dollar, Singapore, Dubai, and so on. And once all these funds get collected, then they get withdrawn into, if you have a current account in India.
I'll be skipping a few questions. I think we may have answered similar ones earlier. I'll jump to Mohammed Raheez's question on if I want to set up an entity in the US as a sister company of an Indian company, in terms of the capital investment from India to US, what all compliances related to RBI and FEMA should I be cognizant of, I believe is what he meant. But yeah.
I love these questions again. The question was, you're looking to set up a US entity from India. What filings, and I think you mentioned a filing in India and the US, do I have to do to stay compliant? Did I fully capture that? What was could you actually state the name of the filing that was mentioned in the question?
This is Mohammed Raheez.
Oh, let me try to find it. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so RBI and FEMA compliances. Question again, I'll recap. If I want to set up an entity in the US as a sister company of India, regarding the capital investment, what types of compliances are required for RBI and FEMA? One thing at Doola, which we do not do, and this is where I would give advice, I'd be wary if others do this. If we don't know the answer and are confident about the answer, we're not going to give you misleading info. So here, I'm not going to give you a misleading answer. What I will say, though, is that for capital investments, you should be careful. One thing I will say is we've learned for folks, for example, setting up a Delaware C Corp from outside of India, there is a process called share gifting to avoid something called round tripping. So those are maybe some words that you've heard. But what I'd say here is what I recommended earlier. Please talk to a professional or a US tax professional on the US tax side of things, which Doola can help with, and then talk to a professional in India for the India tax side of things. In this case at Doola, we actually have in-house tax professionals on both sides. So Mohammed, please live chat us online, take advantage, schedule that consultation. We can help there. And then for other folks listening, we're working hard to actually have at least tax partners in other countries. We feel very confident about giving professional tax advice through certified CPAs on the US side, either through partners or through in-house. But on the international side, we think it's very important that we have partners or folks in-house who can help answer with that same level of clarity.
Great. Thanks for that, Arjun. I think we are down to a last question, and we're already 8 minutes beyond the time planned. This one's for you, Sapna. What would be the cost of setting up a Payoneer US account, and are there any maintenance charges as well?
I'll be brief. Zero. Payoneer does not charge you for setting up an account, and there are no maintenance fees. So yeah, the short answer is nothing. Don't pay.
That's incredible.
I think thanks once again. Thanks, Arjun and Sapna, for giving an extra time. I think we've 9 minutes beyond the time allotted. And thanks all the attendees for staying around. Even though we went beyond 6, I think it was very insightful and very useful for all of us. And it was great having you all today for this webinar. And hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Arjun.
Yes, thank you so much, Payoneer. Thank you so much, founders globally. Most inspiring thing, and excited to see y'all get your businesses set up with Doola and plug into the amazing things Payoneer has too and grow a big business.
Great. Thanks, everyone.